Welcome back to Two Pretty Good Bad Men, an Alias Smith & Jones podcast. I'm your easily bought host, Tabitha, and today we are covering Season 2, Episode 18, The Men That Corrupted Hadleyburg. This episode was shot mid-December 1971, and it aired January 27th, 1972. The story was by Roy Huggins, and the teleplay was by Huggins and Dick Nelson. Nelson has already written several episodes by this point. The episode was directed by Jeff Corey, and Corey was mainly an actor. He had parts in movies like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, True Grit, In Cold Blood, and most importantly, Beethoven Second. He even acted in an ASJ episode, but not this one. He started out in the theater. He worked on Broadway, and he and his wife moved to Hollywood in 1940. Unfortunately, he was blacklisted during the HUAC era, a story we've heard time and again here. He refused to name names, saying, quote, "We had left it, at least I had years before. The only issue was, did you want to just give them their token names so you could continue your career or not? I had no impulse to defend a political point of view that no longer interested me particularly. They just wanted two new names so they could hand out more subpoenas." End quote. During that time, he became an acting teacher at UCLA, and some of his students included Kirk Douglas, Jane Fonda, James Dean, Rita Moreno, Anthony Perkins, Penny Marshall, and Jack Nicholson. Wow. Once he came out of the other side of the blacklist, he worked frequently as a character actor in movies and television. He was in an episode of Starsky and Hutch, Death Ride, I had to throw that in, and he also continued teaching. His directing credits are small compared to acting, but I think they're notable. He did 2 episodes of ASJ, he directed 9 segments of Night Gallery, and he directed for the short-lived Jimmy Stewart show Hawkins and an episode of The Psychiatrist. He passed away in 2002 at age 88. For our guest stars, J.D. Cannon is back as Harry Briscoe. We have Wally Cox as Matt Tapscott. Wally Cox was lifelong friends with Marlon Brando, and I do mean lifelong. They met as children. It was Brando who got him interested in acting when they grew up. He was best known for the lead in the 1950s sitcom Mr. Peepers, which I have never heard of until now. But apparently the episode where he got married received some of the highest ratings of that season. Good for him. He was also the voice of Underdog, and that I do know. He worked on the Beverly Hillbillies, Get Smart, Bonanza, Lost in Space, Car 54, Where Are You? And It Takes a Thief. There she is. He was also in The Young Country, which was that sort of pseudo-ASJ pilot with Pete and Roger. He passed away at only 48 in 1973. According to IMDb, Brando ended up with his ashes, kept them in a closet, and took them out on occasion to talk to. I'm not here to judge anyone else's grief. Brando's son Mike said that after Brando's death, both his and Wally Cox's ashes were scattered together in Death Valley. Next is Shereen North as Bess Tapscott. Evidently, she was used as a potential replacement to keep Marilyn Monroe in line, which honestly sucks for both of them. That didn't end up happening, of course, but she did have roles in movies like The Shootist and Charlie Varick. She guest starred on shows like Mannix, Kung Fu, Kojak, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Matlock, The Golden Girls, and Seinfeld. She passed away in 2005 at age 73. Rounding out the Tapscott family is David Gruner as Tommy Tapscott. There wasn't a whole lot of information about him. He doesn't have a huge list of IMDb credits, but he was a member of the American National Theater and Academy, and he was a boxer. He worked on shows like The Streets of San Francisco, The Waltons, Barnaby Jones, and Dragnet. He passed away at only 52 in 2009 from a cardiovascular disease. And we've got a couple heavy hitters, too. Andy Devine is here as Sheriff Bentel. Andy Devine with that extremely unique voice that was the result of a childhood injury. From the original A Star is Born, Stagecoach, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and the voice of Friar Tuck in Disney's Robin Hood. He was also in a 1939 adaptation for Romeo and Juliet, where he played an entirely made-up character, well, made up for the movie, an assistant to Juliet's nurse, who was there for comic relief. Ill-advised. But you know what? Good for him for making it with that voice, because he started in the silent era. It worked in his favor because he was a very popular star in his day. He hosted a children's show called Andy's Gang in the mid-1950s. He worked up until his death in 1977 at age 71. And finally, we have Adam West as Mr. Brubaker. You know, Batman. And also the mayor of Quahog. That is a Family Guy reference. I am unclear what the Family Guy ASJ watching crossover is like, I would imagine, small. Wes was also in a crapload of westerns. Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Sugarfoot, Lawman, Maverick, Colt 45, and The Big Valley. He was also in a movie that ended up on MST3K called Zombie Nightmare. Terrible movie, fantastic episode. I did get to see him at a con once that he did with Burt Ward. His legacy is solid. He passed away in 2017 at age 88. The title of this episode comes from a short story by Mark Twain, but the story itself is very different. This is the last episode that Pete Duel completed before he passed away. There was still some ADR for Hayes that needed completing, since the studio had already made it very clear that they weren't allowed to stop making the show. Paul Frees, an incredibly talented voice actor, was brought in to loop some of Pete's lines. Producer Joe Swirling remembers that session. Quote, "It was awful. It was just one of the little shades of awfulness that was added when we had to replace those scenes with another actor, however good he was or how hard he tried. Paul came in and listened to the tracks and did a remarkable job, but I cringe when I think of how we all felt when we were doing it. We just wanted to quit." End quote. So let's talk about Pete Duel's last episode. We do have a sneak peek this week. It's of a trial. The judge reminds the jury that a crime has been committed here in the town of Hadleyburg. And those two highwaymen have been spending tons of money in the town, and where did they get it? From robbing banks and trains. And opening credits. Oh, the episode title pops up both before and after the opening credits. In case we missed it, I guess. The boys are now laying low outside the Bannerman Detective Agency. Oh God. Oh God, I know what that means. He is coming. And sure enough, there he is. Harry Briscoe. The boys grab him by the arms and lead him to the saloon. Wait a minute. I know the tune that they're playing in the saloon. It's that annoying song that Claudine Longet, I know I pronounced it Longjet, but I've since been corrected, sang way back in Journey to San Juan. That's cute. They tell him that he owes them. He wouldn't have a job if it weren't for them, and that is true. Harry puts on a pair of glasses so that no one recognizes him. I guess he invented the Superman disguise. He admits that he does owe them a favor, but he's really busy right now. Then they go on to remind him of all that they've done for him, and he finally caves. Then they do that thing that they haven't done in a long time, where they show all the guest stars and their credits go over their faces. The guys tell Harry Briscoe a story complete with flashbacks. They were hiding out as far into the hills that they could get. They camped out near a creek, and Kid said it was the first time that they'd had a chance to fish together since they were kids. Aww. In the flashback at the creek, Hayes asks Kid what he's thinking about. Well, Kid is feeling kind of introspective, and he tells Hayes that he was just wondering what it is that made them the way they were. Why did they end up outlaws? Hayes has an answer, or at least an explanation that makes himself feel better. He figures that they grew up in the middle of a very bloody war. They were about 10 years old when it started. He talks about how both the Confederates and the Unionists came to their farm. He says farm, singular. So does that mean both their families lived on one big farm? Because if so, that's adorable and I love it. And their parents were killed. Hayes says that when they pulled their first job, it didn't seem much different than everything that had gone on around them in the past 5 years. That actually does line up with canon, since they have previously stated that they ran away from the boys' home when they were 15. But Kid's not satisfied with that answer. He says a lot of kids grew up during that war. They didn't all end up with bounties on their heads. Well, Hayes says that the difference is they lost their parents. Maybe if they hadn't, they would have been trained conductors or bankers. Anyway, before this conversation can go any further, and this is fascinating since it's the most that they've ever talked about their background, and how they feel about it, the Tapscott family sneaks up on them, having heard every word they said, and they're going to turn them in Hadleyburg. In the present, Harry asks how they managed to get away from the family. Hayes says that they didn't. They had one chance to, though. Flashback to them riding in the wagon with the Tapscott son, Tommy, keeping watch on them with a shotgun. Tommy falls over when the wagon runs over a hole. Kid steps on the gun before Tommy can grab it. The poor little boy looks terrified. Kid and Hayes exchange annoyed looks, and Kid lifts his foot off the gun and slides it back over to Tommy. Aw, boys, as if they'd ever hurt a child. That night, the boys have dinner with the family. They compliment Bess's cooking, and they get to talking together. The father, Matt, tells them that he's a prospector who never made his big strike. But hey, he'll make $20,000 on the boys. The boys tell them about their amnesty deal. Matt doesn't believe them. And that's fair, who would believe that? But Matt needs that money to buy a farm and send their son to a school. I get that, of course you want your kid to have a good life. Anyway, they do turn them in to Sheriff Andy Devine, and the Tapscotts want their reward. But they're obviously feeling guilty about it, especially Tommy, who knows they could have gotten away but didn't. At the Tapscott family dinner, everyone eats in silence. Finally, Matt is like, come on, guys, this is a celebration, we're rich. But Bess and Tommy are just so bummed because they really liked Hayes and Kid. The next day, Matt shows up wanting to talk to our boys. It's such an awkward conversation. He asks them how they're feeling. Not great, Matt. Not great. He's like, well, Bess and Tommy say hi. Okay, I guess I'll go now. Like, wow. It's almost as awkward as I am. The next thing they know, they've been sent a blackberry pie from Bess. They're quite happy about this. Kid says, wouldn't it be funny if there were a file in this pie? Ha! He's been reading too many dime store novels. No. Instead, there's a whole-ass gun in the pie. A gun that most definitely wouldn't work after being baked into a pie, but no matter. They're not going to shoot it. Just point it. They hide the gun until later that night when the sheriff comes in to relieve the deputy. They get him to open the cell for them, and then they lock him inside before making their escape. You know, this is the second time they've charmed an innocent family into liking them so much that they help them escape justice. And now we're back in the saloon with Harry. Harry's like, well, that's fascinating, but it's got nothing to do with me. They assure him that it does. They want to know if the Tapscotts are all right. And he could easily find out as a detective. Well, that's not really a big ask, and even Harry is relieved that that's all they want him to do. Outside the telegraph office, they get their information. Matt and Bess are about to go on trial for aiding and abetting. Harry's like, sucks for them, but you guys can help me, actually. He tells them his own story about a rich client going to Colorado Springs and losing $17,000 at a casino there. He suspects the games are crooked. Well, if anyone can find a crooked game, it's gambling master Hannibal Hayes. Hayes agrees to help him because he's got an idea how that, in turn, will help them with the Tapscott situation. Does that make sense? They go to the casino in their nice clothes, of course, because this is a fancy casino. Hayes poses as a high roller and gets the attention of the manager when he sits down for blackjack. When Hayes gets his hand on the deck, he clocks it as marked. The manager's like, nuh-uh. But Hannibal Hayes will not be contradicted. He proves it based on the pattern on the back of the cards. Sorry, I don't know anything about gambling, and I'm trying to keep up. Is that how you mark a deck? With the patterns on the back? Interesting. Anyway, it's very impressive and sexy of him, I'm not gonna lie. Harry comes over, confiscates the desk, and says the casino owes Hayes a thanks for speaking up. Otherwise, it could spell trouble for the whole establishment. The manager breaks open a brand new deck and tells Hayes to check that one. He does, and that one's legit. Kid comes over and joins the game. Of course, Hayes starts winning. Hey, do you guys ever wonder what would happen if Brett Maverick and Hannibal Hayes played poker together? Like, who would win? See, I'm here to ask the real controversial questions. The dealer goes over to the manager and says that Hayes must be playing some kind of a system. The manager says it's not possible to have a system in blackjack, and he'll lose sooner or later. But the game goes on, and the manager gets more and more anxious. He comes to the conclusion that, okay, Hayes is playing a system. But, he's just counting cards. That's all he's doing. It's a known thing that you can do. It's hard, but you can do it. I mean, I can't, but other people can. Finally, the manager confronts Hayes. Hayes says, open the drawer again, and let's see what kind of decks you're really playing with. And for good measure, Kid pulls out this tiny little Dillinger gun to make sure he does it. Some bannermen hold the manager back while Hayes checks the other decks. All of them are marked. The next day, the guys have one more favor to ask of Harry. They don't say what. They just let him know that he will be hearing from them. This leaves Harry very, very nervous. Back in Hadleyburg, a man named Brubaker arrives in town. He enters the courthouse just as the judge is sentencing a drunken disorderly guy to $30 or 30 days. And Sheriff Andy Devine is very against that because A, the man doesn't have $30, and B, there's no room at the jail for 30 days, what with the Tapscotts being locked up. He's literally holding this man up. This man is currently drunk and disorderly. He has no idea what's going on. So the judge suspends his sentence and orders him thrown in the ice house to see if he sobers up or freezes to death, whichever. He doesn't care. Dude! When the sheriff leaves, Brubaker introduces himself as a lawyer and says he's been retained by friends of the Tapscotts to defend them. He asks for a week's delay for the trial so he can prepare. The judge grants it after a lot of arguing, and the boys are watching from afar, saying Brubaker is doing a great job. They're basically having the entire town redone with the compliments of Hannibal Hayes and Kid Curry. Like, the church is being repainted, for example. At the trial, the prosecutor is doing a great job for the defense, to the point where he must be doing this on purpose. He absolutely must be. He's like, sure, they've never done anything wrong before, and sure, this poor, innocent 10-year-old child will probably have to go to an orphanage if his parents get locked up, but, you know, it's... And we're back to the sneak peek. The judge is back to reminding everyone that yes, Hayes and Curry are helping out the town a lot with the new rec center and the new desks for the schools, but they got that money through crimes. Brubaker objects and has a witness who can disprove the judge's tirade. He calls Harry Briscoe to the stand. Briscoe testifies that Hayes won the money from helping the Bannerman Agency take down a crooked casino. Hiding in a tree, the guys keep an eye out on the courthouse with a pair of binoculars. And yay, the Tapscotts are found not guilty. Harry, you actually did good. For once. To signal the guys it went well in the tag, Harry sets off a firework. The guys see it and are thrilled that they pulled it off. They get on their horses and ride out of Hadleyburg. The end. There's a lot to like in this episode. Especially the conversation that Hayes and Kid have in the beginning about their upbringing. The whole scene in the casino is also very good. Harry Briscoe actually being competent and not double-crossing them for a change was nice. But on the whole, I don't think it connects very well. There's two separate plots going on, and unlike the family and the posse that wouldn't quit, we don't get to know the Tapscotts very well. They're likable enough, but we just don't get attached to them. But I do think that the discussion between Hayes and Kid at the beginning is worth it alone. Like, for a last episode that Pete Duel ever completed, I'm glad that conversation was in there. The line of the episode goes to the deputy, actually. When Hayes offers him a slice of the blackberry pie, Hayes says it's the finest pie ever baked, to which the deputy gets very defensive and says, "My mother makes the finest pies ever baked." I just love how insulted he is about it. Like, Hayes should know damn well that this guy's mom makes the best pies in the world. And the episode goes to Hayes for being so cool at the blackjack table. Next time on this podcast, we're taking a break from the episodes because I want to talk about Pete, what happened in the immediate aftermath, and Roger. Research for this podcast comes mainly from the wonderful book Alias, Smith & Jones, The Story of Two Pretty Good Bad Men, by Sandra K. Segala and Joanne M. Bagwell. Thanks for listening.